Hello and welcome to the 167 podcast. So good to see you. Today we're going to be speaking about church online. Can you really connect with God through a screen? We're going to try and answer that today. Stick around. There's a saying in the Bible that everybody in your room in a coffee shop. Hello and welcome everybody to the 167 podcast. It is so good to see you yet again for what we know is going to be an amazing episode. Welcome. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Phil and I'm joined by the sneakishly handsome Swen Steffens.
Wow.
Joining us here today. How do you take that type of compliment? What do you like?
I will take it. I'll take whatever I can get at this point.
Swen gave us a hard time. So good to see you, man. So good to
I
be.
styled my hair just for this, you know.
It's looking good.
Thank you.
How
You
you
said
doing?
it earlier, but no.
Well, now it's on camera,
Yeah,
so it
no,
counts.
it's right. No, it counts.
Good to see you, man. How you doing?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, glad to be in our studio, jazzing it up with a few lights, and excited for the conversation we're going to have today. And beautiful day outside.
Wonderful day, very warm.
It is.
And
It's
for
a
the
stunner.
people watching, they'll see our fresh little setup here. We've got a few more lights that we've thrown into the mix, and we want to welcome you on whatever platform you are watching on today. If you're joining us on YouTube or if you are listening on any of the podcast streaming sites, we want to encourage you, give us a subscribe, give us a like, leave a comment, leave a review, even if it's bad. We don't mind.
Well,
we'll
we prefer
mind.
the better ones.
We'll prefer the better ones, but hey, we're always open to learning and to getting better. But we love that our community is growing. We do this for the community of people that listen and watch. And we were just chatting about how the community's been growing, and it's so encouraging to know that there are people tuning in, listening,
Absolutely.
and watching. And we're hoping the 167 has been helpful to you. And if you're joining for the first time, really what the 167 is, it is a space. There's 168 hours in the week. We trust that one of those hours are being spent in a church somewhere, maybe our church, maybe a different one. But listen, you've still got 167 other hours in the week where we think we can be growing, getting better,
Come on.
having value added. So we want to try and speak into those hours in the little time that we have
Good.
together.
Good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I think today's conversation is going to be a good one, a fruitful one.
Yeah.
Because it is the reality that as Christians we are dealing with. I know that people in all different industries are dealing with having to move and shift their businesses
Big
and
time.
their ideas online. Some places can't. I mean, you can't go on a virtual holiday, although if someone could make that work, trademark.
Virtual holiday,
Yeah.
like just kind of like through screen and internet,
I guess
be
like
somewhere.
virtual reality maybe. A virtual reality.
Do you know what? Some of
holiday?
the YouTube videos now that you can watch in those like insane, it feels, I think that
Like
maybe
4D.
Like that type of vibe, putting me like in a safari, just have nothing charge the vehicle. I could do that.
Well, maybe. Yeah, listen, that could work.
Do you know what? Something weird that I like to do, I'll just confess this, is that on YouTube there's these videos where they actually put you in an airplane. And like it's like an 8-9 hour video, and you're in the cockpit of an airplane, and you're just flying. You see all the lights, and it can get boring, but it's actually strangely
But in the
soothing.
background, I mean, you're not sitting there watching this. This is in the
No,
background
it's
of
just
life.
there, but I can look. I mean,
Yeah.
hey, we're flying over some
Totally.
mountains.
I actually, what I do like, I haven't done it like for an extended period of time, which I maybe should, is you get those 4K like drone shots over
Yes.
islands and stuff like that.
Nah, that's
That's
ridiculous.
maybe something I need
No,
to do,
crystal
but-
clear water.
I know. Well, you actually just want to be there, and then it ruins all the fun. But
We'll get there. We'll get there.
one thing? What's new in your life? What could you tell the podcast community that is new in Phil's life at the
What's
moment?
new in my life at the moment is that we are currently renovating our house. So we just moved into our place, currently under renovation. So we're staying with our in-laws. They've graciously taken us squatters into their granny flat, which has been very cool. And that project's going to be done in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So we're very excited to move back in. It's going to be a new chapter for us. We did stay in there for a little while. Then the renovations happened, changed our bathroom, some really good things. But we're very excited to be back and take our dogs with us. It's going to be really good. So that's
good.
happening for me. What's happening with you?
I signed up for my very first book club.
Come on.
I know.
I saw about that. What is that? Is that like a bunch of different people?
It is a coaching and consulting company in the US
Wow.
that puts these book summaries together. They only do one book a month, but they do like an executive summary. They
What?
interview the author at some point during the month. If you
What?
buy the book, then they give you a reading plan, and then there's a community that you can discuss the book with. So yeah, and then they give you like action steps, things that you can like implement and put.
And these are
into
people from around the
practice.
world?
All around the world. So it's quite interesting. I'm quite keen for it. I just thought, you know what, we're always talking about, hey, people got to grow. So I thought, hey, I need something where I can keep on growing and learning from other people. And I just thought it was great. So I
What are the
jumped on.
details? Maybe there's people that would want to.
Yeah, it's Leader Books by Michael Hyatt and Company.
Very cool.
I think this month they've got, hey, this is a free shout out anyway for our millions of subscribers. But I think at the moment you can sign up today and it's $1 for the first month, and then afterwards it's like $20 a month.
Jeez.
But that doesn't include the book though. So, but I still got to get more into it. But I'm quite excited about that.
That's exciting. Yeah, let me know how that goes. Maybe you find some cool books that we can talk about here.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That'd be amazing.
For
Awesome, guys. Well, while we get into really what we want to speak about today,
Church on the line.
Church on the line, because we can chat shop all day. But what we really wanted to do today for all our listeners and watchers is we want to speak about church online, quite simply, because what has happened over the last year is that, especially for church-going folk, we have been thrust into a new world of doing church outside of the building, doing church through our iPads, our TVs, our computers, and really having to learn how to connect through a different medium, through a different way. Some people have found the challenge exciting and have embraced it, and a lot of people, and I think most of us in different seasons and different times, have actually struggled with the adaptation, struggled with, but I'm so used to being in the building. I'm so used to shouting at Swen when he's speaking, and now I'm not even in the room with him anymore, and the worship even, being in the same room with the worship, and people have struggled with having to adapt to this kind of new way of doing and of living. So we want to talk about today really just kind of why is that, and maybe some ways that we can possibly win with church online, because we can't really tell in this season when exactly things will change. I mean, we miss the building, we love being in the building, but we do really believe in our hearts that church online can be an extremely effective way to connect with God and to connect with people. So maybe we can start just quite simply, Swen. Why do you think that some people are kind of struggling? Because I think people struggle to the point where they just end up not really watching anymore. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. Actually, I'd love to ask the listeners, let us know how you feel about church online. 'Cause
Great.
we would love to hear from you. This is a community we want to go back and forth and hear from you. Church online, I think part of it is it's new. And part of it is, I think with families, it's easy to be distracted. I think the distractions are easy.
Yeah.
So if you've got kids running around, there is a big distraction element. If you've got, if you're watching it on your phone, you're one notification to watching YouTube cat videos.
Oh, wow.
You know.
Yeah.
So I think there is that element, and also I think the experience of being in a building with other people worshiping together. Because I don't think we were never made to do church by ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think the experience of kind of being by ourselves, it is tough. I think your faith is built up by other people as well in the room. And there's an atmosphere. It's like, it's the difference between watching the UEFA Champions League by yourself, having your team win, and being in the stadium.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Or watching it with friends. You'll watch it, but there's no one to high five.
Yeah.
But if you're with a group of friends on the stadium, you get caught up in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
I think that's where the struggles a lot of the time come in.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. Wow, just the point on distraction, I think it's so good. Because when we were initially in the planning stages and we had to shift, I mean, as a church, almost in a week,
It was,
just to move everything over to online. And we were thinking about and doing research on the different platforms and how you want to embrace certain platforms more. For the listeners, things like Church Online, the actual platform, or YouTube or Facebook, and how the watch time would vary because there would be less distractions on each platform. So if you're going to be someone who watches on Facebook, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But the possibility of a cool cat video popping up and taking your attention is very high.
Totally.
I think with that's been one of the main issues is
Yeah.
distraction. It's overcoming distraction, and how I think one of the great things that we've actually managed to find in this, because we don't, even when we return to the building, we're not going to do away with Church Online. We love Church Online. We think it's a great vehicle to get the gospel to places and to people that wouldn't otherwise be able to connect with our building. But the Church Online platform that we use, we love it so much. It's because it almost takes distractions away. It almost creates a church-like environment, church-like space for people that aren't in the building, but you won't be distracted by the cat video or the YouTube notification.
Yeah, the platform that we use.
The platform that we use. The platform that we use. And instead, you'd be able to be engaged with a community, engaged with next steps, engaged with things that can help you take a step forward with community and with Church Online. And I think that is almost one of the big things that people have been missing is the community.
Yeah.
It's the people. It's being able to connect with people on a regular basis. I think that's why we've been so big on creating spaces for people to connect with each other and engage.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love to know if this is also partly along a generational divide. Like if you are under the age of maybe 35, do you find it easier to engage online as opposed to people who might be over the age of 35?
Yeah.
Because, for instance, I had to learn how to do email when I was in high school. Okay, not proud of it, but I couldn't get it the first time. There's generations that are rising up now who why would you use email? I just direct message somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I am curious how it might affect on the generational divide, but there are certain weaknesses to Church Online, and there is no point trying to cover that up.
Sure.
But there's also weaknesses to coming into a building as well. There are different strengths and pros and cons. The nice thing, of course, is if you're in the building, you come to a building, your focus is maybe a bit sharper because if you've got kids, your kids would maybe be in the kids church area, and you're not going to get up in the middle of someone's sermon and be like, yeah, okay, I'm cool, I'm going to go take a phone call.
Even if it's bad.
It may have happened a few times to me while I've been preaching, but that's neither here nor there. But it's like you're captive in that moment. And so, and I think from what I'd like to say is, because there's a lot of things that we'll probably end up discussing, like what is the church even? Because how can you say you're at church? Maybe we've got to redefine what church is, and what does the New Testament speak about church, and how did they connect, and how does that translate into a 21st century or 20th century community? What does that look like? Point, I think, is that the way I think about Church Online is that it's not a replacement for in-person gatherings.
Yeah.
It's a supplement.
Yeah.
But for some people who can't get to in person, then it is more than a supplement.
Yeah.
And we can never downplay the impact in the community that people feel online. So even just this week, there was somebody in our church community who reached out to our online church sort of hub or group that we have, requesting prayer. Now, for me, that's a huge thing of what happens in the church.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of things that we can go into as to why there's strengths and what are the weaknesses. But I'd like to say it's not a replacement, but it is a supplement.
Big time. I think you'll be just speaking along the lines of people and connecting. And I mean, I saw that lady that requested prayer on the Facebook group, and I thought that was amazing to see the responses that she got from that. I think that you'll be as connected as you allow yourself to be. Because, this lady, she still had to step out. And yes, it was a few words and it was a post on Facebook, but she still had to go out and ask for prayer. The response, she didn't know what that was going to look like. To have over 20 or 30 comments of people actively praying and trusting for her and believing for her, that was completely based on her making a decision that I'm going to connect myself to this community.
Absolutely.
I think the issue that some people are facing is that we feel disconnected, but we're also not actively connecting ourselves. I think that there are ways and avenues, even with Church Online. And I love what you said. We're Church Online isn't trying to replace church. We know that it's different. We're not under any illusion, but we don't believe that it's a season of complete disconnection compared to a season of complete connection with people. Because I think you can still be coming to church and not feeling that type of connection either.
Yeah.
So I think what Church Online has presented for people is probably maybe more of a challenge to connect, but still the onus lies with people to connect themselves to other people through Life Group Continued.
Yeah.
Church almost online continued, ways to connect. There have been online courses. There have been live stream prayer meetings. There have been so many ways where you can connect yourself to the life of the church. And I think some people have done that, and I think some people have chosen not to.
Yeah.
And that has been the challenge that has arisen, is that the onus has almost been with us as individuals to take those steps closer to God. And it's something that we mentioned last week as well. It's almost become a time where we've had to really be decisive and almost pick up our own Bibles and experience and explore God for ourselves, because we can't come to, for the season, we haven't been able to come to a building and experience that atmosphere and that presence that you spoke about. Now we've had to start doing it for ourselves. And that's tough for people.
Yeah, no, it is tough. Like, I mean, some of the scary stats that I'm reading in articles is that pre-pandemic in the US, average church attendance was moving to the point of once every 6 weeks.
Wow.
Now that's pre-pandemic. The numbers are even obviously scarier with the pandemic, in that of those that could come back to in-person gatherings, it seems like the average is at about 35 to 50%.
Wow.
Some people are experiencing like 75% of people coming back into buildings. But what is happening, I think it's just accelerating it, because you hit something perfectly on the head where you're saying you decide how connected you want to be.
Yeah.
And disciples don't do it because it's convenient. Disciples do it because it's what Jesus would be doing. It's connecting to the community.
It's going to keep you healthy.
It's keeping
keep
you
you
healthy.
spiritually strong. Yeah.
So you can be a strong Christian. Go, you know what? It's not for me. I'm going to do things other ways. That's fine. But what are you doing in your spiritual life that has a lag to it that will catch up to you in a couple of months' time, or even a year down the road? And the point is this: if we are disconnecting more and more from the body of Christ, we're not being discipled, and we're not being disciples. We're allowing our own lives and our own thoughts and our own imaginations and our own perceptions to frame our discipleship journey.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen. Now, I agree the worship is different, and we're trying to do as many, and churches are trying to do the best that they can around that. But ultimately, the teaching is still the same.
Yeah.
I mean, you would watch a movie, you would watch sport, you would watch series, you would be on video calls, but to do church online, no, I can't do. Like, that's where I'm like, I get that it's not the same experience. And churches are obviously not sitting with these multi-million rand or dollar production companies. But what are we still doing? We're still getting the message of Jesus out there, and the message of how to grow, become like Jesus. And I actually think this is a great opportunity for the body of Christ around the world to get back to what we're called to.
Yeah, the basics.
Back to the basics. I'm not going somewhere to be entertained, although entertainment is part of it. I'm going somewhere that I can grow to become more like Jesus, and I'm going to do that through community. And community looks like conversations with people.
Yeah.
It looks like interaction. It looks like iron sharpening iron. And it looks like I'm hearing the message of Jesus, and that is it is speaking into my soul. I come prepared because I want the Lord to speak. And all of that, I would argue, can still happen, because I've listened to messages and I felt so convicted by the Lord.
Wow, yeah.
Even on video, I felt his presence. Why? Because the presence of God isn't limited by a room. If Jesus could heal someone's daughter from in another place without ever having to be there, surely he can be in your lounge speaking to you through a message that's being streamed to you over the airwaves. So,
to be open and honest, I think if I had to limit the messages that have changed my life to messages that I was actually in the room in, I'd have to cut all of them out. I think there have been such powerful sermons that I've heard that have shaped me over the last 4 or 5 years that I watched on a video, whether it is through college that Pastor Graham showed us, or conferences that we streamed into, or saw videos later on. There have been some powerful sermons that haven't been in person, but completely through a video. So I would agree. And maybe for a moment we could talk about posture. and we can talk about during church online, be practical. How can we experience worship then on a deeper level? How can we then experience the sermon? And I know from, maybe you can touch on a good way to carry ourselves when listening to a sermon, but I know for worship, in the beginning of church online, worship was kind of awkward because when you're in the building, you're standing up. Maybe you're a hands up guy. Maybe you're a hands to the side. Maybe you got a bit of a jig to you. Whatever your worship style is, awesome. On church online, most of the time, you're probably sitting down, maybe eating something, maybe drinking something, and then the worship comes on, but nothing almost changed in how we're acting. Nothing's almost changing in how we're revering whatever's going on in front of us, the worship songs that are being sung. When it's live, we can picture God, we can begin to have this moment, but for some reason, for worship, we struggle to do that. It's the same that we like to encourage people to do, is that when the worship comes on, firstly, it's great to have church online on your TV because that way it is a bigger screen and it's louder. And that way it also gives you an opportunity that when the worship comes on, maybe to stand up, maybe to close your eyes, maybe to have your hands up or to put yourself in a position or a posture that you would almost in church, because then it helps your heart and your brain understand, hey, I'm still doing something where I'm revering, where I'm worshiping, where I'm praising God. It might not be a building full of people, but I think we can still get a lot from that. And as soon as I don't do it every time, but as soon as I started doing it, I definitely started experiencing my worship moments when it was online in a different way. I started having those same emotions, those same feelings. Not that worship is always feeling driven, but I started having those same emotions that I used to have when I was in a building. I know the same can be said for when we're listening to sermons, the posture that we have.
It's good. I always find it funny because we try to defend feelings in a sense of like, oh, no, feelings aren't everything.
Yeah.
We're emotional people. Feelings are important.
Yeah.
So I make no excuse for the fact that there are emotional elements to what we do.
Big time.
Because there's a whole person. It just can't, your life can't be based on your feelings. It's got to be based on other things as well. So I think what you're talking about is great, that if you can get yourself into a posture that allows you to have a certain feeling, that's positive. I don't think that's manipulative. I don't think that's wrong. I think it's actually really helpful because, hey, what's the goal? To get to Jesus. What's going to help you to get to Jesus? Well, do that.
Yeah.
So, look, I can't claim to stand up and stuff like that in our worship. I think if I was watching it by myself completely and not with our family, there would be times I'd crank the volume up.
Yeah, that's usually when I would do it when I'm by myself.
Yeah, when I'm by myself, I'll crank the volume up and I'll go for it. But normally with the family, I'll put it louder. But because we also have Samuel around as well, what we do together is actually, for me, the worship becomes a bit more reflective. And I try focus my attention on the Lord, and I try think of Him, and I try sing those words to Him in my heart.
Yeah.
So I think
that's the beautiful thing about worship, is that it doesn't always have to look the same when the goal is getting closer to Jesus.
So absolutely. So again, it's different in different environments, and I think we've just got to learn how to do it in our environment.
Great.
And so maybe for some people, put your headphones in.
That's a good point.
And go to your study if you're the only one if you're sharing a house, or maybe if you're a coffee shop. I've listened to worship in coffee shops, and that's been very moving and meaningful to me because it's more reflective, I think, and dwell on the words and think about how I'm giving that to the Lord. So I think if you're put it soft, or you've got something else on,
or you're checking your phone,
checking your device, even though we do allow people to comment, maybe for that moment, for that worship, put that aside and go, okay, for this, I'm going to try connect with the Lord here.
Yeah.
And it can be an ebb and flow.
It can.
And it's not long. But what you're looking for, like what we talk about, is we want to get people to that point where they meet Jesus. So that doesn't have to take 3, 4, 5 songs. It can take 1, 2 songs. It's about the attitude of your heart.
Yeah.
And we also recognize with Church Online, it can't be hours long either.
No.
Because you just couldn't watch that.
Oh, practically, our church online services are a bit shorter, than what they would be in person, because we understand that attention levels and spans are different. I mean, if it was for me, it would be much shorter. It would be very short. But from that point of view, that makes total sense. And I love using the words, the attitude of your heart. I think also we've also got to check at where we're at mentally when we come onto church online as well. I mean, if you wake up 5 minutes before the service starts at 8 a.m., whatever, you're going to struggle. It's going to be a struggle to get into the service as well, and just giving yourself time to have a coffee and a breakfast.
I mean, personally, I don't mind if people are watching church online and they're having breakfast, or if they're in their pajamas or whatever. But if you're not going to prepare yourself, don't expect to have an amazing experience.
Yeah.
But there's no, because I don't know what that person, how people react and respond.
Yeah.
But for me, I would say I'm more engaged if I'm dressed, I've eaten, I've had my coffee,
Yeah.
and I'm there. I'm there. That's why I put it on when that we've got like a 10-minute intro.
Yes.
I put it on because I'm preparing myself. I'm making sure
Yes.
that everything's done. Don't always get it right, but the more prepared you are, the more you get out of the experience. And what we even do is we give my son sweets so that he can watch the kids online,
That's good.
so that he's focused. It's a treat.
Still a fun experience.
It's 10 minutes, but we what we're trying to do is we're trying to guard the discipline of continually coming together around the message of Jesus.
Very good.
And that for me is community. Would I prefer having friends over and watching church online together? Yes. And so maybe there's people who are here and they go, you know what, I hate watching church by myself. Well, you can invite a friend over.
You can.
I think you can. Or a family member or whatever, and have a couple with you and do church together and discuss it afterwards. Maybe that's even more meaningful for some people.
Very good.
Church online doesn't have to be church alone.
Yeah.
And I think that is where the danger can come in. We do things alone, which means we can get discouraged, we can lose our disciplines, but maybe doing church at home in the sense of I'm going to include other people in this, that would help. So maybe it's not having a physical person there, maybe it's having a Zoom call open while
Sure.
you can get creative with it. I'm not saying Zoom calls are the answer to the world's problems, but I think it's about, hey, how can you be held accountable? How can you continue to be gathered with other people, having conversations with people around the message of Jesus? I think that's what services for me certainly are.
Very good. I think the goal, and I think maybe this is where we'll go next, but I think the goal of church, in-person church, and the goal of church online, for us definitely isn't different. There is a common goal of what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to get to. But even just as we're finishing up these kind of practical, helpful points, I think even when listening to sermons, what helps my wife and I is to engage with the message. And it's not to act weird and stand up and go, but if something is said that we like, we'll just go, yeah, that's good. Amen. And we're sitting next to each other and we're just almost staying with the preacher,
Good.
staying with the message.
And reinforcing it, I would
reinforcing it for ourselves, staying with
So
where the
good.
message is going. And for us, it just helps us to be there. The messages are about 20, 22 minutes, if 25 maybe, and it helps us to stay present, helps us stay engaged, and it helps us to really, like you're saying, enforce what's happening in our hearts. And for us, it's another step. Like we're saying, we've got a posture for worship. I think there's a posture we can develop for the preaching
That's
as well.
good.
In just finding ways that we can stay with Him.
That's
Finding ways
good.
that we
It's
can stay with
active
Him.
listening. I mean, you learn more through active listening.
Yeah.
If you're distracted or you drift, so that helps you to stay engaged with the message. I'd like to ask a question in a sense of how we think about church online, because I think that we still get it. I think we still get it a bit wrong, where we go, church is a place I go to, rather than a community I belong to.
Yeah.
And we get that mixed up very, very easy. And I understand it, because we say we're going to church. But what do you think in this current space, what church is meant to be?
Yeah, I think it's very understandable for people to associate the church with a building or with a place that people gather and do church. I think that's awesome. What the Bible teaches and what Scripture says about the church is that it's not so much a building, it's actually more a people. And it's a people that are coming around a common goal. And we call this goal almost discipleship, but it's this goal to become more like Jesus. So when I think of the church and I think of us meeting together as a church, I think that's amazing. And I think it forms a part of what the church is and what the church is trying to do. But I don't think that is the church. I don't think church stopped when the coronavirus came to town and we had to stop going. I think church, an aspect of church maybe changed, but I don't believe the goal changed. I don't believe that the way that we are becoming more like Jesus, yes, there's been adaptations, but the goal has stayed exactly the same. So with church online as well, yes, we are now not meeting together, but there are ways that we can engage with the teaching of God's word. There are ways that we are engaging with praise and worship, and there are ways that we are engaging with people, which are, according to the book of Acts, some of the key tools in becoming more like Jesus and being the church. The church is not a place that we go to. The church is something that we can be as
Yeah.
a people. That's how I understand it.
Yeah.
So when communicating church online and communicating the church, I think you're 100% right. I think there have been moments in time where we have maybe not communicated it correctly because we make it sound like church as you know and loved it is gone and there's a new way and a new era. It's not. Things have just changed slightly, but the church is still the same. And we package
Yes.
it differently. We almost say that the method can change, but the
Yes.
message never will.
Yes.
So our method of packaging the message has changed recently.
Yes.
And it will continue to change with a world that is ever changing. But the message itself, the core message of the gospel,
Yeah.
the message of Jesus Christ will never, ever change. So Church Online has just been another, fairly large adaptation. I'll give you that. There have been ways that church has changed and the method has changed over the years for a very long time. If we
Yes.
compare the way we do church now to maybe 20 years ago with
It's
the
very
lights
different.
and the band and the music, it has been changing.
Yeah.
I grant it. It's been a huge change. I'm not trying to downplay the change, but it's almost just in line with what has been happening for a very long time. And as soon as we believe the church stopped or the church stopped being the church, I think we make a mistake.
Yeah.
That would be my point of view.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think if this happened 20, 30 years ago, this coronavirus, and
Wow,
we shut
what
the
would we
world
have done?
down.
Jeez,
So I'm grateful for the technology.
so good.
Technology is a poor master, but it's a fantastic tool,
Brilliant.
a fantastic servant.
Mm,
And in every generation, the church has used the technology of the time to
Great.
communicate the gospel.
yeah,
Why did Jesus come in the time of the Romans? Because the Romans built roads that allowed the gospel to travel throughout the known world.
wow.
So that accelerated the spread of the gospel. What is the Roman road of today's civilization? It is the internet.
It's the internet,
Allows the gospel to travel through all the parts of the known
Very
world
good point,
at a
yeah.
speed of light. And even Bill Gates, love him or hate him, he said that I misquote him probably, but the marketplace for the future, the meeting place for the future is the internet.
Yeah,
And we see that happening.
yeah,
If you any articles you read now about online consumption, is that viewership on Netflix, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, it's all going exponentially up. People are getting more access to the internet. And if the church retreats from the online community, what
Yeah.
are we doing? We're running away
From the
a
people.
lost and broken and lost hurting world.
Very good.
So I'm not saying that we have to agree with all of the things that happen online. And I agree that there are a lot of evils and things that happen online. But those evils are originated by
great
people.
point. Yeah, very
And so
good.
we're still called to reach people. So we
Very
can't
good.
retreat from the online space. But I think that the online space, we will learn to, it's so new for us as a church. Our vision for it was before the pandemic, and it's long term. It always has been. But now we're only getting to grips of, hey, actually, what does community even look like
Yeah.
in an online? And the reality is that churches met in homes and they met in the temple in the first century. But we don't live that kind of lifestyle anymore. We don't live the kind of lifestyle where every day we're going to meet in the temple and every day we're going to meet in homes.
Yeah,
That's not feasible nor practical. So what can we do? Well, how do we take what the church is, which is a community, and apply it in every day? Well, we can do that through technology. We can do that through online. So you can hear the message of Jesus. You can connect with your friends who are following Jesus in a chat room. You can pray for one another by shooting a text to one another. We've been doing church online for so long, we don't even realize it because we've been encouraging people with text messages.
Inviting people.
We've been praying for people through text messages. So there is more going on. We're just trying to get better at it.
yeah,
And I understand there's other problems like what's the connection? Like, do people even have access to the internet?
Yeah.
And those are questions that need to be answered. I don't have the answers to those questions, but we need to get there. But the way that I see the church happening is that whenever Paul went to preach the gospel in a new city, he first went to the synagogue because that's where people understood, or a religious place because that's where people would understand some sort of talk about God.
yeah,
And from there, if he was rejected from the synagogue, he went to the marketplaces,
Yeah.
they're meeting places. And so online is the meeting place.
Yeah.
So we're trying to encourage people to connect online. And so for some people, it might mean, hey, this week I'm in an in-person gathering. Next week I'm online. You know, that it's got to be able to be flexible
It's a
as
great
long as people
perspective.
are gathering.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know all the time that people are gathering, but I tell you who does know. You know, God knows.
Yeah.
And that's not to be like, oh, great, there's a big man upstairs. No, it's just people don't gather to church because of us. They gather because of a revelation of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think there are difficulties with church online, but the longer it's around, the better it's going to get.
That's a great perspective. I think, wow, that's a great way to look at what we're facing at the moment, a great way to try to understand it. And I mean, I think what I take from that is we like to quote that scripture that says, God will, turn all things for our good. And often we use that in the context of something bad happening. Somebody got sick or somebody died. But when he says all things, he really does mean all things. It's what the scripture means. So I think what this pandemic has taught us is to have a different perspective and a different mindset on the happenings and the advancements of the world, like Rome building the roads or the internet or all of these things. These are advancements. These are things moving forward. They weren't inherently evil in their origins. I hope not. But God has been able to, and He will continue to use these things for the gospel and continue to use these things for and to reach people. So I think, as believers, and saying that I definitely want to work on is definitely take my foot off kind of a negative point of view or a negative perspective on new things, and rather try to look at it from the point of view of what could God do through, without trying to sound just as crazy spiritual, but what could God do through this new thing or through this happening, whether it be bad or good, in order for Him. Because I think we saw statistics as of last year on numbers of people being reached through church online, really in the height of COVID-19. And they were absolutely staggering, the millions and millions of people that were being reached from the church global, the church universal, people being reached with the gospel. And you can't tell me that that isn't God orchestrating something out of what is a world-stopping pandemic. Literally, economies are falling apart, but you're telling me millions and millions of people being reached with the gospel? That sounds like a divine plan to me.
It does, yeah, I agree. And look, the truth is that there are lots of people all over the world who have gotten disillusioned with church online.
Big time.
There have been. But there have been people who have been getting disillusioned about all kinds of stuff. It's because it's a critical time in our history. There's a lot of shaking going on.
Yeah.
So let's commit to the things that are going to help us in this season.
Yeah.
And I mean, how interesting is this? The church didn't own a building for the first 300 years of its existence.
No lights, microphones?
What? No, because the reality is the only reason why churches began to get buildings is because the church, the religion of Christianity was, the faith of Christianity was legitimized in the Roman government around 365 AD, I think it was. I can't remember if it's Constantine or the person after Constantine. But they got saved, and they made that as the national religion of Rome.
Yes.
That's why they were able to institute things and put buildings together and gathering. It's not just... people think, churches are supposed to always be in buildings and physical places. People are always supposed to be connecting to one another.
Good.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's better in person, 100%.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we can't take the good of both and try deal with the bad things of both.
Very good.
Right. So yeah, I wish I could say it is the answer to where we're at, but it's what we have right now. And who knows what innovative breakthrough can come.
Yeah.
That's how I like to think about it. What I try not to do is attend every other church online. Because it's true. Every church is the same distance away.
Yeah.
One click.
Yeah.
So you can end up visiting 5 different churches. So I've actually stopped that because obviously we're leading a church. I don't want to compare all these other churches. I want to stay focused to what we're doing.
Well, how connected can you be to one church if it's energy and time? And not that a bunch of churches aren't bad, but it's just there's a blessing that comes with the planting. And if you're able to plant yourself into a church and be focused and dedicated, then whatever that church is, I think you'll get the most from that.
I think that's community where people know your name.
Yeah.
And people can pray for you. and they can serve you, they can look after you, and you can in turn do that for other people.
Yeah.
That for me is the power of the church.
Yeah.
So you might hear great messages from other churches, and I celebrate that, I respect that, and I would encourage people to listen to great preaching.
Yeah.
But if they can't be a home for your soul, then I don't think it's worthwhile to commit yourself there. So rather commit to the local church down the street that has an online expression, because at least there is a way for. Now,
Very good.
If you can connect to a church that's across the borders, but they're able to provide community, then
Yes.
do that.
Yeah.
Like we're not saying what church you should be
Should be the
connected
closest
to.
one.
Yeah.
No.
You go to the church where you can help build the church,
Good.
where you can be a part of the community of the church, and people can know your name and know how you're walking with Jesus.
Very good.
Like, I mean, that's
I think that's brilliant advice. I really hope that everybody that has tuned in and watched and listened today, I hope this has helped us in our church online season. We don't know
Yeah.
for how much longer it's gonna be in this way. We know
Yeah.
the church online isn't gonna go away. We're gonna continue to use it because we see so much good fruit from it. But we still believe, to answer our question, we believe that we can have effective, great relationship with God and with people through church online by understanding, knowing that we're always connected to the level at which we want to be.
Yeah.
That our posture during things like worship and during things like the sermon is extremely important, and to understand that the church has never ever been a building. It's
No.
never been a gathering place. It's been a people committed to discipleship. It's been a people committed to growing and becoming more like Jesus. And I believe we can still do that today, like we did it last year and the year before.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously we're, in a sense, can be seen as defending a position because we're
We can be
convinced.
because we work for a church.
Yeah, and we're
sure.
convinced that what we're doing is the right thing.
Yeah.
And there are some things that you can't do digitally. You can't baptize digitally. You can't really take communion digitally.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but how does it work?
Yeah.
And that's why I always think it's not, if you can do it with people, it's better, because you can get baptized by your group, by your small group.
Yeah.
That's still biblical. It doesn't have to be a minister that does it.
Yeah.
Or an ordained minister. You can take communion with your family. You can take communion with other believers in your group as well. Like, there are ways. That's why I think my hope is that they will complement one another.
Great.
As we continue to get better at it.
Great.
And as restrictions in different places soften, we will be able to do a lot more of those things.
Very good.
But I think you can scale it. I think the church of the future is less event driven. It is more community. And however we bring the gospel, my dream about church online is this, because it's not going to go away, and we want to be we want to be on the cutting edge of it. We don't want to be left behind as a church. Is that somebody might stumble onto a feed. Somebody shared a church online link and they stumbled onto it and they heard that God loves them. They heard that there's a way to be saved, and that it was communicated in a way that respects them as a viewer, and that they are able to take their next step, maybe give their life to Jesus, or maybe join a community where they can experience all that the community of Jesus has to offer, like prayer, like growth, like acceptance. That's my hope and dream. I don't think that church online is ever meant to be an end of itself. It's a vehicle to connect people to one another as they walk in their relationship with Jesus. And so that's why I'm a big advocate for doing church online, that people don't watch from the outside in while you're talking to a different crowd of people.
No.
I'm an advocate of, we talk to people online like they're people online.
Yeah.
We honor their presence, and then when we do have in-person gatherings, we talk to people like they're in the room.
And we're
we're not trying to
yeah.
talk to two different types of people.
Yeah.
We're trying to value people's attention that are there. And I hope that people feel that. I hope that people feel that value. I don't know how people like to receive it, and maybe you, as a community, you can let us know. But yeah, my hope is that people would meet Jesus. Because what is the good news? The good news is a message to believe. It's not a task to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so you can do that online, I think.
I think that's great. I think that's awesome. And I'm just grateful, just this conversation, I'm grateful that we have got a faith system that refuses to be left behind,
Yeah.
that refuses to be left in the dark, where other organizations and businesses and other parts of the world are always on the cutting edge. I think the church can be on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
And our business is people. We want to win people, and our
Good.
vehicle is the gospel.
Good.
So we'll continually be on the front foot. Sometimes we'll get it wrong, and that's okay. And sometimes we'll get it right. We're not perfect, but the best part is that we get to do it together.
If we don't get things wrong, how will we ever learn?
We won't.
How will we ever grow? Failure moves us forward if
Yeah.
we let it be our teacher. And I also want to just say this to people who are part of a church, and I get it. If you struggle with church online, this is really not a bashing session. I think this is more of like a, hey, let's look on the inside and see all the
Just
motivation,
explain.
see what is all happening with church online. But I want to encourage you that whatever church you're a part of, commit to that church.
Good.
In this local season, in this season, to your church. Don't move around. Your church needs you in this time. Your community needs you. Even if you've got any issues in the church, don't make those decisions now. Support church now, because the church actually needs you. The church needs your presence. It needs your encouragement.
Yeah.
The church body needs your comments that will lift other people. It needs your encouragement. It needs your support. It needs your financial support in this
Yeah.
season. So that churches can get through and flourish and help people through this church
Very
online
good.
time. And there's a scripture that I always hold on to, and you've heard me say it in our meetings a lot of the time, is that those who refresh others themselves will be refreshed. So if you refresh people in your church community, you will have a greater experience of church online.
Very good. Yeah, that's amazing. If this has been helpful to you in any way, I mean, it's been a great conversation. That's a great reminder, I think, for me, actually, on just why we do what we do and pursue what we pursue. But if this has been good, please, like we said, leave us a comment, leave us anything, give us feedback. We love the fact that we're building a community here, and we want to know what you think. We want to know what you say, and help us get the word out any way possible. If it's sharing the podcast, if it's taking the YouTube link and putting it on your socials, you can do that whatsoever. We love the fact that more people are being helped, that value is being added. We just want to help.
Yeah.
That is our heart. That's
That's our
essentially
heart.
what we're trying to do here at the 167. But thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope this has helped your church
It's been
online
good.
journey.
Yeah.
It's been awesome.
Thanks so much. I've had a great conversation. It's good to talk.
It is
and to
good.
flesh these things out sometimes. And some new things get dropped in your own heart. It's awesome.
It's a great reminder.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Sven. And thank you to everybody watching. We trust that you guys will have a great rest of your day. God
Cheers,
bless.
fam.